We are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Sure Parenting Podcast. I am your host, Sammy Bell, author of Sure Parenting, and I am here with Erika. She runs the Powered by Joy podcast and actually has a lot of really amazing things. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I'm going to read your bio if that works for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Erika Franses, and yep, you're right. I do have a podcast where I like to talk about things related to the outcome being joy, having more joy in our lives. I have gone on a little journey here and come to having a deep passion for helping other women connect and find that for themselves as well. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Talk about parenting.
I'm so honored that you're here. So, Erika is a Sacred Remembrance guide and the creator of the Sacred Return. It's a two-phase soul journey that helps women reclaim their joy, their sovereignty, and their divine embodiment. And it just gives me chills. So you were a former real estate agent who turned into an intuitive mentor and energy channel, which is what a crazy journey, even that. Like, wow. So Erika blends emotional alchemy, embodiment practices, and playful spiritual rituals to guide women out of survival mode. I think we all need that right now. And back into their own personal truth. So you have your podcast, you have the transformational events that you host, and your signature products like the Sacred Shift practice. Through those things, you support women in harmonizing their feminine and masculine energies so that they can rise rooted, radiant, and wildly alive.
Yeah. You got one right. Let's take it, man. I'm all about it.
Yes. Oh, I love this.
Can't
so
be wasting
much.
it.
Right.
Yes. This is
I love this energy. I love that the way I feel like our works overlap is because so many moms are in that survival mode place in parenting.
Yeah.
And you've walked that walk. You've been in that, And so to have you as part of our community, helping women to really embody their power and come back to themselves and find that passion and joy and excitement about their life, whether their kids are 2 and 4 or 22 and 24. So encouraging, and it's so inspiring. And it makes my heart so happy that we met.
I know. Never an accident.
Exactly. So let's start kind of at the beginning of your story. Can you tell us a little bit about what you feel like maybe makes your motherhood journey unique?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I realized there's no mother's journey through parenthood that isn't unique, right?
Accurate.
Because we're all coming to it with our own unique life experience. And then on top of that, all of our children are unique individuals. And so there is no way you can possibly completely understand somebody else, unless we're walking in each other's shoes. We can have a good understanding and have compassion and empathy. But for me, I think a lot of people can identify with a lot of things. Like, first of all, I was a teen, so I was pregnant in high school. So started off with a bang. Changed my life path there. I thought I was going to college and ended up taking a different path. And then I married my high school sweetheart. We were married for quite a while, had 3 boys, went through divorce, experienced being a single mom, and then found my soulmate and experienced blending a family. And now I'm into grandmahood and the epic phase that is showing up to be for me.
I love that.
So yeah, I can't say that there's something like super special and unique. It's just that we have a major thunderstorm going on, and it's like cracking right over the house.
Yeah,
like 2 seconds
on my side too.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that was it. You're all special and unique from the universe. Going, don't you say that about yourself?
Yeah.
We're all so unique. And I think we all have so many opportunities to make choices to craft the experience we want to have, even when our kids are little.
Absolutely.
Or, little all the way up through when they're grown adults and their parents too.
Yeah. And I think that's something you and I both share in common, is this desire to help moms feel their own power.
Yeah.
And a lot of the difficulty or frustration that I see in parenting comes from a sense of powerlessness. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. And so when women feel empowered, those things smooth out a little.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there's still hardships. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
we start to be able to hold that with the belief that, and we can do it. We can get through that, whether that is bringing in extra support or trying a new strategy or whatever that looks like, we're going to get through it. And that really is something I want all of the moms to believe. And
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. I just want to tell you one of the best pieces of advice my mom ever gave me was when the kids were babies.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you're going to get blasted with stories, advice, people saying, this is how you should do it. And your doctor, saying, no, this is the way. And she said, you're the mom. And no matter like anything, you have a special connection with that child and you need to trust your own knowing about your baby. No one knows that baby better than you. And so that's like, I took that to heart. And I think that crafted part of the way I parented, because I was like, no, like nobody knows them as well. Like I'm going to know better than the doctor that there's something off.
Yes.
So, just want to interject that. We all
I agree.
in us. We just have to listen and trust that we do have it inside us. Like we didn't have all of the technology and support and things, and lots of babies got made because that's why we're all here for thousands of years. Moms have figured it out.
Absolutely. And I think, the benefit of our current time parenting young children is that there is so much information. And the downside to our current time parenting young children is that there is so much information. It really is a double-edged sword there. And I love information, love it. And it can get overwhelming. And so at the end of the day, your own knowing, your own gut, your own authority in your family is so important. And that once again gives moms their power back. So I just love it. So you were parenting young kids before there was like 4,000 Instagram reels a day telling you what to do. Was that experience, especially with your mom's input there, were you holding certain fears about the future or how it would turn out or how your kids would turn out or how the relationship would be? Or did you kind of always know what you wanted it to be, or kind of what was that journey like mentally, emotionally?
I would say that I was very aware that I was a young mom, and I did have fears around, was I going to have I was aware I did not have all the tools that I knew I would need, like, and I wanted to make sure that I gave my kids more tools than I was given, not out of like, that what I experienced was bad or anything. I felt like I actually got equipped in a lot of fantastic ways from my parents, but like I wanted even more for my kids so that they could have a better foundation. And so it's like, am I gonna, be able to get everything packed in so that when they launch, they have the tools they need, because I was parenting right when I was becoming an adult. And so I was very acutely aware of the tools I was missing already, like, and so I think that was definitely probably my most prominent fear, was like, am I going to have the tools? And so I have sisters. I have two sisters. And I think community is really important way to support yourself. And there was just this hunger for knowledge of like, okay, what do we not know? And like just reading book after book, because that's what we had, book after book after book, because it was like, there's, I know there's tools I need to gain. So I just wanted to make sure I was learning as many tools as I could to show up for my kids.
I love that. And I want to commend you because, I know that our society says that 18-year-olds are adults, but our brains are not fully formed at 18 at all. We still develop our executive functioning skills until like 25, 26. And so
I had 3 kids by then.
Right. Biologically,
it's so crazy to think about.
Growing up while you were raising these kids, and to have the ability to know you were a young mom and to put aside the judgment or shame that some people try to make young moms feel and go, look, I know I don't know everything. I know there's things I'm not going to know because I'm 18, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to move forward and pursue whatever it is I don't know. And to be fair, that's true for all parents, whether you have kids at 18 or 45, that's going to be true because, we're still humaning and lifing, and there's so much. We can never know everything. But there is something I admire so much about a very young mom who is able to step into that role and just be open. Like, I might not know it all, because there is so much judgment that's often thrown at young moms. And it can be very natural to want to defend against that and kind of shut off input, because how dare you judge me all of the time? I'm sick of it. Totally understand that. And there's this next step of being able to go, whew, I don't like how that feels. And is there a grain of truth to that I can then use to my benefit and my children's benefit? And I love that you were able to do that. I was So looking at your family now, you have 4 grown sons, and there's a lot of closeness from like how you talk about them and how you all communicate with each other. Without sharing any private information, we don't need to do that. We respect children here, adult children as well. But are there any mindsets or foundational things that you wanted to make sure were there that have ended up with you guys having the closeness that you have?
Well, I will say that probably my most high prioritized thing that I value the most was respect. So I felt like when respect was there, mutual respect was in place, everything else got handled correctly. And then communication. So I remember when I was little, and this is just the generation that I was raised in, like it was because I said so, like these are the rules and it's because I said so. And I remember as a child, just in my mind, raging against it because I was like, but why? Why do I need to do that thing? Like, I remember just wanting to know why. So, and it would make me so angry that I didn't deserve an explanation of why I needed to make the choice or follow their guidance. And that really stuck with me. And so that was very important to me when I got to be a parent. I also just was raised in an environment where I witnessed people being different in different places. So they would show up at church and be this way. At home, they were different this way. And I remember thinking, I don't like that disconnect. I don't feel like that's, I didn't use those words of, oh, that's not authentic as a kid.
Right.
I just remember being like, no, like this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't like that. Like, shouldn't we be the same everywhere? Like, shouldn't we be, I don't know whether people are watching or not. Shouldn't we be the same people? And so I remember thinking I wanted to model that to my kids, that I was genuinely authentic no matter where I was, and just communication. So I really, really talked a lot with my boys. And one of the things I noticed was like let's see, I'm trying to share this. I noticed that it seemed like a lot of men that I've come across in my life didn't really even know how to identify like what they were feeling. So like maybe they're going through something and you're around them and they're grumpy, but you're like, what's going on or whatever. And you'd be like, hey, are you okay? Are you upset? And they'd be like, and realizing I don't think they even know what they're feeling because they don't even know what to label it. And so I remember making a conscious decision to teach my boys how to discuss their emotions, to be able to understand, oh, this feeling is anger. This feeling is happiness. Oh, this feeling is sadness. So I really put a lot of effort from when they were teeny tiny to talking about the emotions and being like, oh, it looks like you might be feeling this way. How do you, a lot of communication around their emotions so they could tell me how they were feeling. So I wanted that foundation. And then I can't speak enough to like having time with each other where there's not the distractions. We sat around the dinner table a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we would have dinner and then we'd all just stay around the table talking for like 2 hours after dinner was over and just sharing about what was going on. So there was just a lot of like just communication, and I'm sure they were like, because if there was something going on and there was issues, like I was going to talk through it if it took 2 hours. I'm sure they're like, oh, mom, make it stop.
Right.
But
And of course, there's resistance to that. But what you're also showing them is our relationship is worth doing the hard work to protect. Our relationship is worth repair. Our relationship is worth understanding. And a through line I'm hearing is this phrase that I believe it's Maria Montessori said, but if I'm wrong, somebody's welcome to correct me. Begin as you mean to continue. And so you have this little tiny person who is just learning how to people, and like emotions are really big and we don't know what those are. We don't know what's happening. And you have this intention for them to recognize what's happening in their body and to identify it with them, or for them maybe first and then with them, and then they communicate it to you, and that pattern persists. So in their adulthood they have the language and the expectation that, hey, if there's a thing here, we're just going to talk about it. We're going to work it out. I trust that because you started it so young. And I love hearing you discuss this because, you know, this is the root of Sure Parenting. Sure is an acronym for self-honoring. So that's the authenticity piece. Unique, understanding everybody's unique brains, unique experiences. That's emotional intelligence. Respect is respect and empathy. And so there's just so much overlap there of, oh, I don't like how it feels if somebody just cuts off my questions and tells me because I said so. So when I can, to the degree that I'm able in any situation, I'm going to take the time to help them understand why we do the things we do, why these are our family rules, what is important about this. And that does two things. One, it helps them to create their own embodiment of those values. We are not going to embody things that don't make sense to us. So if we want our kids to be capable of taking accountability, for example, then we can't just force them to say sorry every time. There's no real accountability and ownership of that experience. But we can help them to understand, oh, when you did that, you look at his face and you see how it's all red in his cheeks. That means he's feeling really upset, right? So what's something we could do to repair that? And when they're little, you can say, make it better, because they don't really know the word repair yet. And then vice versa, the other person, oh, you're really upset that he did that. That makes sense. What do you need right now to feel better? What do you need for repair? And it begins this conversation that turns into this like automatic response later of, yeah, I accidentally, this literally just happened. I accidentally kicked her in the head, but I wasn't trying to. How does this
there's
happen?
a lot of that.
And it was, they were like, he was like leapfrogging over her, I guess. So, you know, things happen.
Naturally.
But he immediately did say, I'm so sorry. And then followed that with, what can I do? Right? That is ingrained in him, because in our family, relationships matter more than anything, more than our ego or trying to avoid the like uncomfortable, like, oh, I did something wrong feeling. Relationships matter. And he got her a little ice pack and she was fine. And it was very sweet. And I think that when the parenting focus is punishment based, I need to make you uncomfortable or miserable or in pain or something so that you never do that again. That focus makes mistakes, right? We can't go, oh, I really messed up, because there's this huge reaction about it. If the reaction is, we're human and we mess up, and it's our responsibility to figure it out together, to make repair, to make amends, to find a different strategy, to fix what we broke, whatever that looks like, then you have kids who come to you and go, ooh, I messed up. You're my guide. You're my parent. You're my person I come to with like, help me put it back together. And that's one of the greatest gifts I think that I have with my children, And I heard it when you and I were talking, that your kids come to you still as like actual full adults. That makes my heart so happy. So that's, I think that when you begin as you mean to continue, it happens, and it of course shifts, but they get to embody it, and to see all of that come from your brain's looking at your experience going, this is how I wanted it to feel. So I'm going to make that feeling in my family. And I find such power in that, and such authenticity, right? I'm like this little girl that's like, I mean, I'm not being disrespectful. I genuinely just want to understand why. And to look at your kids through that lens and like the benefits that's brought to your family.
Well, I had my youngest was very strong-willed in a different way than his brothers.
Yeah.
And that really forced me to have to also approach parenting completely differently. And so it really brought forth that, like, oftentimes they just need to understand why they need to trust and or listen to you, So if it's like, hey, when I ask you to to stop, it's because I see a car coming because I'm taller and I'm just trying to keep you safe. So I'm not just telling you stop just to be a, bossy.
Whatever, yeah.
I'm trying to save your life. So like, you should trust that that's where I'm coming from. So, but it was, I did try to offer that explanation.
I love it.
As much as I could.
And that was the second thing. I never got to the second thing. The second thing is that builds credibility. So that when there is a situation where you do need to just do it because I said so, they just listen, because they know later they're going to be able to question and go, what was that? And we were in that situation too. There was a brewing DV situation across the street, and it was not in a great area of town. This was when I lived in Vegas, and I could hear the screaming escalating and this fight. I was like, "Ooh, we need to get in the car now. We need to go." And my oldest is a Y kid, always has been, always will be. And I love that about him. He's also, not coincidentally super into engineering and coding, and he like pulls up the internet code next to whatever he's looking at to like look at the code and figure out what does what. Like, that's his brain. So I'm like, get in the car. And I don't normally snap like that. And he was like, why? I said, now. I need to go now. And he just got in, and he is looking at me like,
this must be serious.
As he's buckling his little seatbelt things. And we leave, and he's like, can I ask you now? And I was like, yeah. And I told him, he was only like 5 at the time, so his brother was 3. And I was like, I felt very uncomfortable, and it's a situation that could become unsafe. I actually left and called the cops, and I was like, could somebody please drive by and make sure this doesn't turn worse? Because things like that can escalate in probably anywhere, but particularly in Vegas. I had seen things. So I was just like, I need to get my kids out of here. We need to go. And there was such a normal expectation in our family that they got answers, that even though I had to delay the answer, that was okay. Like, there was credibility there. And I really noticed it in that moment. That moment always stuck with me, that I felt like I was really doing the right thing and trying to help them understand the world and building this trust, so that when I had to kind of borrow against that trust, it was there to borrow against. And yeah, it's something I really enjoy too. And it makes sense, because the relationships that I value as an adult also are ones where I have trust built. So it would make sense to me that kids would feel the same. So we talked about, really you started thinking about this before you even had kids. When you were parenting, was this like very front of mind, or did it become kind of a habit for you, or was it something you always felt like you were striving for? How much brain power do you think it was taking during your parenting? And I ask this because sometimes moms get so consumed with doing it right that they make themselves really anxious. And then they miss like the joy and the connection and the ability to be human in their families too. So how did you balance that out?
I definitely feel that it was top of mind. And I think when you set an intention, have something in your heart, it will be present. Like, so it wasn't something where it was like every day I'm like, oh, I gotta make sure there wasn't that striving behind it so much. And, I didn't always embody that. And I had days where maybe I gave them language to tell me how they were feeling, but I didn't show up and respond in a open way because I was depleted for some reason or whatever. But I think I was always able to come back, from that. And so the respect came from like me also coming back to them even when they were really little and being like, you know what, like I had a bad, decision there. I don't like how I just yelled at you. Like I tried to point out my mistake, or I would point out like, I don't like how I reacted there. I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? I am going to try to do this next time because I know that that's, how I want to be. So I tried to talk it through with them and just say like, I'm still learning too. I'm still learning how to be a parent. So I talked about that too. But I don't think it was a level of obsession. I don't think it was in my face the same as it can be nowadays with social media. And there's so many powerful tools, but I think it's kind of the same as like when you're trying to manifest something and you're so obsessed with, I need the thing, I need the thing, I need the thing. You're like literally repelling it and making it you're creating tension there. Where if you're just like, you know what, this is what I want. This is the intention I have. You're occasionally reflecting on that, checking in on your heart space if you're feeling a little off or frazzled. And you're like, okay, remember, like the intention here is just to show up or whatever the thing is and like letting it. I have you set it and let it. That's kind of one of my little things because, if you're trying to hold tight to that, there's tension there. You're not going to show up the same. If you are overly concerned about like trying to, oh, I got to show up and parent just this way. How do you teach a model to your kids acting that way? How they can get through life in a relaxed, fun, playful manner. We haven't even talked about this, but one of my core things was I loved playing and I played with the kids. And like, if we don't model that life, how are your kids going to live their life? So if you're like, oh, I got to do this, I got to show just perfect. Now they think, oh, I have to go through life just, and then they make a little mistake and you're like, if you're hard on yourself, guess what? Your kids are going to learn how to be hard and judge, be critical, be hard on themselves. Instead of being curious and going, oh, what could I learn from it? They're going to be hard on themselves. And I've learned a lot of these tools later that I wish I knew, more of when they were little. I do think I own my mistakes and stuff, but I don't, I definitely didn't live in a space where I was trying to like, it wasn't overly rigid.
Good.
Yeah.
I
don't know
love that. And I love that you mentioned this because I had talked about, when parents are so focused on punishments and control, it creates that like, I don't want to be accountable. But it also does that if you are so focused on being perfect and you're so anxious about getting anything quote unquote wrong, and you're really critical and hard on yourself, that also makes accountability feel like terrifying, right? So it can come from either side. And what I love about talking to you is the proof is in the pudding. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be obsessed every second of every day. You don't have to get every reaction right. You have to have a genuine, heartfelt intention of mutual respect and connection and communication. And then when you mess up, you own it. You apologize, you move on.
But follow that. Here's where trust gets built. When you make that mistake and you've done something and stepped forward in a way that broke that respect,
Mhm.
and you've owned it and you've apologized. This is what I used to say is like, if you really mean you're sorry, that means you do not want to hurt me again, right? You do not want to repeat that if you're truly sorry in your heart, if you love and care about me. So the trust gets built when you say, I'm sorry, and then you do adjust your behavior and try to become more aware next time you're in the same situation.
Yeah.
So if you keep saying sorry and doing the same thing as a parent, they see that and they're like, nope, the apology and all of that talk means nothing
Yeah.
because they didn't adjust their behavior. So they must not care about me enough to change their behavior and stop hurting me. And so
Mhm.
you can't just void out your mistakes and your screw ups, by apologizing, like really checking your heart and like making that effort, like it needs to mean something. And
Mhm.
so that the proof is in adjusted behavior. You
Yes.
adjust how you've parented. I said the same thing, from them. Like, I expect you to not do that anymore. If you're really sorry and don't want to hurt me again or your brother again, then you won't keep repeating that behavior.
Yeah.
So
Well, and in
that's a
both
piece of it too.
absolutely, because that's the difference between just the words parroted, which is why I'm
Hmm.
not a huge fan of the forced say I'm sorry, because it doesn't mean anything at that point when it's faked or lied about. It becomes a like get out of jail free card as opposed to an actual declaration of change. And that is why my job exists because it's not easy to change. When you are in the thick of it and you are overwhelmed and you are tapped out and your resources are depleted, it is hard. And it
Hmm.
makes sense to need community support or breaks or resources or information or strategy or whatever it is to actually show up differently. And with kids, we have to keep in mind too that their brains are underdeveloped. So often we use language like, oh, well, you chose to do this. Unlikely, very unlikely. Like when the part of your brain that can control impulses isn't there, you're not really choosing to be impulsive. It is happening to you as much as to the other person. But that's where that language about your emotions comes in. That's where that awareness of your body and what you need sooner before you blow up comes in. And it works for both, right?
Hmm.
So as we're learning as a parent, okay, I know that if I don't eat, I get real cranky. And if I am not nourishing my body and not honoring my body in this way, it's going to be so much harder to show up the way I want to show up. So, what are those signs in my body that I can notice before I'm ready to snap? And then
Hmm.
I intervene then. And I teach that to my kids. What does it feel like? We talked about anger like a volcano. So
Hmm.
one of my kids in particular, he loved to label his lava level. He's like, my lava level's getting to here. I was like, that's amazing that you can recognize that. What are things that help your lava level come down? And he started to learn these self regulations at like 6, 7, and he felt so empowered to be able to communicate. He needed space. He needed earphones to block out the noise. He needed something. He has some sensory sensitivity, so certain smells
Hmm.
will just.
Yeah.
And he made himself, with my help, this combination roller of oils that he really liked the smell of. And he carried that little sucker around. He put it right on the table, and he would feel that bubbling up, and he'd go and rub it under his nose. And like to watch him take accountability, know he wanted to change it, figure out what the warning signs were, and then actually change it in like early childhood, that's incredible. But he couldn't
Yeah.
just do that alone, right? He needed support, and we need support. And I feel like there should never be shame in needing support. And if we have to change our behavior for our apology to mean anything, then we have to be able to put aside our ego and that like, oh, I don't want anybody to know that I need help part of ourselves. We have to tell them,
Mhm.
you want to protect me, I appreciate it, and this
Mhm.
matters enough to push forward anyway and to get support. And we want to get support from trusted people. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
But it's worth it because when we are able to change our behavior, we're able to show our children what true accountability really looks like. And whew, man, like imagine a world with all of these kids raised to be able to actually take accountability.
Mhm.
I love the way
Very
that
different world.
I love it so much. Okay, so you touched on this, but I want you to elaborate. Play, obviously, as part of joy can be a really important element. But this isn't like new for you. This is something that's always been a cornerstone for you. So how did you find play with your kids? And did you always know how important that was? Or was it just kind of natural to you and then later you look back and you're like, "Hey, that was that was a good one."
Well, I will tell you that I grew up in a household where my parents, but especially my dad, was very playful. That's how we connected, roughhousing, playing outside, just
Yeah.
so I think that influenced me on some level. But then as a teen mom, I thought, oh, I'm an adult now. I gotta put on my adult hat and be serious. And so I think that I lost touch with that part of myself. And then about 7 years of parenting, um, there was play in there, but not. But I had this experience where we were at family camp, and there's lots of not just my immediate family, but my siblings and their kids and
Mhm.
parents and people from the church we were attending at the time up at this family camp. And there was an evening we were all out, and my sisters and I were playing. And we were joking around that we were like the those three girls in the movie Charlie's Angels.
Nice.
And we were on a secret mission. And I just remember being like, oh yeah, like this is so fun. I miss playing. And it was like something clicked. And then like the next day I just had this freedom of like, oh yeah, it feels so good to play. So it was like getting in there and playing with the ball with the kids, and like it was like I gave myself permission to let that side of myself back in
I love
that I
that.
thought wasn't supposed to be what you do when you're an adult for some reason.
Yeah.
And so that became an outlet for me. And so a lot of times when the kids were outside playing, I was with them, either participating in the thing or I was nearby. And then as they got older, I was on the bike rides with them, and like I there were times where when things were stressful, I found that going outside and throwing the football with them, or just going outside and playing with them physically, uh, was how I decompressed from my stress and like got plugged into my peace, again, was to turn and just play with my kids. And I don't think I realized specifically with boys, conversation flowed when they were physically active. You weren't
Oh,
just
yes.
sitting down looking at each other.
Yes.
So I figured that out. So it was like what was going on in their lives just came out as we're sitting there throwing the football back and forth, or whatever we were doing. The conversation just happened. It wasn't this forced me trying to get them to share stuff.
Yeah.
And so as they became teens, I became very aware of that. And so um, I was glad I had already had that kind of established.
Mhm.
And so it just became a happy place for me, instead of being like, oh, I'm stressed. I need space away from everything that feels like a responsibility. I do feel like I made a choice to like lean in to playing with my kids as a place to find some joy in the midst of really challenging times and it was like, well, me sitting here stressing about inside the house is not changing anything. So my kids are here. They're going to be out of this house before I know it. I'm going to go out and just play. And that's because I can't do anything else anyways right now.
Yeah.
So I might as well go out and play and just have some fun with my kids and just forget about all the other crap right now, because it just isn't serving anything. So it did probably come I look back and I'm like, thank goodness I did that. But there was a developing awareness that was very therapeutic for me. And it helped, I think, me feel bonded to the kids too.
And I think
I
it
felt
probably
close.
helped them feel like, A, you liked them, and B, that there was like a power in them. Like they could do something that was mutually beneficial, right? Because I'm sure being a single mom is really hard, and I'm sure they weren't completely unaware of the hardships there. But if there was like, yeah, but like when she plays with me, when she plays catch with me, or goes on a bike ride with me, like she feels a little better. And it's not because it's their job to make you feel better, but it feels nice to know you have a positive impact on somebody. So that's pretty
I'm not
cool.
sure.
I
I'd
like
have to ask
that.
them if they felt that way, but
Yeah,
I'd
I'm
like to
really
see maybe
curious
they
what
had
they
those
would say.
thoughts. Yeah, I'll have
Yeah,
to
if they
ask
ever thought
them.
about it.
Yeah.
So one of the consequences of raising these emotionally intelligent kids is that when they are adults, they could very well come back and say, you know, hey, this thing in my childhood, I didn't like it. Um, if your children were to bring something to you in that regard, do you think it would be hard to hear? And if so, how would you handle it?
Okay, so this is the pleasure of parenting adult kids, especially when they become parents themselves. I feel that that is a time where they become really aware. I think it brings forward memories for them. It brings issues up for them, like childhood wounds start to arise for them.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the relationship with you or not, it can prompt conversations or thoughts. Or one of the things I noticed is where they were choosing to parent very distinctly in a different way than I
Mm-hmm.
did. And you could tell by the way they convey it to you that there was maybe a pain or a thing that they didn't like you did behind why they're doing it distinctly different, and making sure expressing, hey, I need you to, this is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so especially as they become parents, there's a lot more opportunity for that to happen. And so and even when they're not, I've had things come up. But um, it, I think because one of the things I did, I've talked to them and asked them, like, what do you think has built that trust or whatever? And they always said that, like, I always would hear them out. I always asked questions and tried to understand where they were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if they did mess up, they felt like I wasn't going to freak out on them emotionally. I would hear them and try to understand what led them to make the decisions they made so
Yeah.
that I could understand. Um, and so I guess I had that practice in place of like going, okay, like hit me with it.
Yeah.
Because I used to say, like, I would rather hear a hard truth than you lie to me or hide something from me,
Yeah.
because I can't help you through your situation if I don't know the hard truth, if you messed up, or if there's something between us that's a problem. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't tell me I have a problem with you, I can't reflect and figure out where I need to adjust and what rings true for me too.
Yeah.
So, like, you gotta shoot at straight at me, like. And so I used to always say, like, I can take a hard truth, just tell me, like,
Yeah.
I can take it, like, I want the information so I can learn and understand you. So I've continued, I feel that I've continued that. And so it can be really uncomfortable. I've had moments where I felt a little shattered, because I showed up the best I could. And I was like, oh, that's how I made them feel. Like, that is how they perceived this experience. And it just hurts your mom's heart, because we all try to show up the best we can, and we
Yeah.
show up with the tools we have in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so just grounding myself and going, you know what? I love them enough that I want to hear what their experience was, or what they felt, or where their truth is, because it is their truth. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how I feel. It actually happened, and it's not going to do me any good to defend myself. I need to, if I want to continue to have a growing relationship, just like a marriage or anything,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not working on growing your relationship and staying close, it will go stale and break apart, right? So it's just the same with your kids. It has to be an active participation of, like, desiring to grow and show up in the relationship better and better, even when they're adults, like still figuring out how to show up differently. And I'm still have so much growth I'm sure my kids would say I still have lots to do and grow, but I'm a willing student.
Yeah.
And I am so passionate about having a relationship with them that I'm willing to have those hard conversations that feel really uncomfortable. And if they're really intense, so let's say they give me something and it's really intense and I'm having a big emotional reaction in my body, like, whew, I'm going to say, okay, like I've tried to receive that. There's times where I haven't been able to just like receive, and I've gotten emotional a couple times, but not like screaming or whatever. Right. And just said, okay, like, I hear you. Like, and I've learned that I need to usually take a day or 2 or 3 to process everything they said. I'm now hearing it. And I have found that usually within a day or 2, there might be like some little part of what they said that like really hits home for me. And I'm like, ooh, they're right. Like, I did not show up in that moment. Like, that was not cool on my part. Okay, I know I need to go back and make repair here. And then maybe they say something, I'm like, that's not true for me. That for me, that doesn't feel right. And I do feel to honor myself and speak up for myself and what my truth is. This is what that looks like, but it's not out of defense. It's like to say, I need you to hear, this is why I came and showed up this way. This is why I reacted the way I did. This is why I was feeling the way I did, because this is how it felt to me. I'm not trying to sell them on that that's how they need to agree. I'm just saying that. So I think it's giving them the space to say, giving them the respect and space to share how they feel and what they're struggling with or what they're frustrated with. And then if you give them that and you're genuinely trying to hear and understand and validate that that is true for them because you love them, then there's usually a reciprocal space where they will hear you say, this is fine. But it's not done from ego. It's done from desiring to come to a mutual understanding and love for each other, that what each of us has as a true experience in this moment is okay. And that we still love each other no matter how we're showing up in that moment. I still love you. I still want to hear you. I still want to talk to you. I still want to be around you. Like, all of this, I still love you, like, no matter what. So that has been something I've had to really practice multiple times. And what happens is, as they become adults and you do that more and more, I think it builds that foundational trust that then as more conversations happen in the future, there's a little bit more ease there, because we both are like, okay, she's going to hear me out and she's going to genuinely try to grow and make adjustments too. And I know I can show up and hear what she has to say, and that there might be something in there for that's valid from her too, So I think it kind of builds on itself, but we have that separation of them trying to find their independence, separate of their parents. And then there's this, especially as, they adult and come back into a new form of relationship with you, where they're needing to have boundaries with you. That's a whole process. It's a whole nother topic. Learning what those boundaries look like as they become adults, especially as they become partnered, that there's another adjustment of boundaries when they have a committed partner in their life too, and like respecting those boundaries and that dynamic too. So lots of opportunity for growth there. So I went off on a total tangent.
No, this is amazing, because you literally walked through like my next 4 questions. So I'm just like soaking it up. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is great. And I think that, first of all, I have to commend you, because you're instinctually, like, line by line following like the recommended way to navigate those conversations. And I just love it. Somebody that I really, really adore, Matthias Barker, he does a whole thing for adult parents and their estranged adult children. Obviously the parents are adults, but and that's everything you just said. That can you hold space for their experience, even when you disagree a little bit? Can you be authentic in your expression? Can you give yourself time to process and go, yeah, I hear you. I heard you say that. And I was like, check. I hear you. I hear that this was harmful or hurtful to you. And I hear you wish it was different. I'm going to process that before I respond because I want to give it the respect it deserves. Goodness, the emotional maturity that you are displaying in those moments. And it sounds like, as you're describing these shifting relationships, sometimes there's growing pains. It's like we went from, this dynamic to this dynamic to this dynamic, back to this dynamic. And to have a relationship that has a strong enough foundation that we can trust that all of those growing pains are going to work themselves out. And at the end of the day, we love each other and we still want to have a relationship with each other. I think that's incredible. And I think too, something you noted, something I say a lot is two things can be true at the same time. It could genuinely be a parent's intention and best effort and desire to do well. And that could still have felt harmful to a child. And so often what that child needs is just to be heard. Exactly what you said. I just really need to be heard in this. I need you to understand how your best intention still felt like this to me, right? Yeah. And when we can meet that need over and over and over again, quite often those adult children are able to go, yeah, I can see my parents' perspective. Like, I understand they didn't have malice and harmful intent. I see that they had this aim, that their best option in the moment felt like this. And I can choose in my own parenting to aim differently, or maybe have the same aim, but a different strategy.
Yeah.
Right? And the more that we talk about it, the easier it gets, the less hurt feelings there are around it. And the more that we're able to hold all of these things at the same time. I hope with my children that they will parent in their own authentic ways. I hope that they're able to say, hey, I really want to do it this way, right? I want them to communicate those things to me. And knowing that I've empowered them to trust that parenting gut and to honor their partner, even if that means having a hard conversation with me, right? Those are things I can feel proud of. And getting to hear you talk about it, I hope you do feel proud. I think you've done really incredible as a mom and as a mother-in-law and as I wish we had a different word. It is different when we're parenting littles that we're like 100% solely responsible for. And then we're parenting adults who have their own responsibility of their life. There is a difference there. We don't have a
huge difference. Yeah.
Do you find, okay, so the next question was, what is something you've learned since your kids have been adults? But there's kind of two, maybe three branches of that. One, on a personal level. Two, we're kind of talking about how different that relationship is. But then three, you're now a grandmother. And so what has shifted in the way that you grandmother versus the way that you parented is I'm very interested in that too.
So I like to think of this as like, it's almost like getting to reincarnate.
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird maybe to some people, but I was like, oh my gosh, each generation born after you is a chance to show up in that role differently and show that you learned something. And so I think oftentimes we romanticize what it's going to be like to be a grandparent. And we get this idea of what it's going to be like. And then there's the reality. And this is just my own unique experience. Some people might just get right into that awesome experience. I clearly had some growing to do, so that's okay. But I think that I went in thinking, I know I have learned so much and grown so much now that I really want to show up as a grandma differently than I did as a mom, because as much as I did my best, there were tools and skills and emotional intelligence that I did not have. Yeah. So as you have been able to teach them the language, and then how to self-regulate and what to do after. I didn't get that far. My big step for me in parenting and generationally was to teach them to know what their feelings were and to talk about it.
Which is massive.
But
so huge. Like, let's not diminish that.
Okay. But the next, I feel like that, and I feel like the generation now is there. So they get to do that because they had that foundation. Now they're getting to.
Yeah.
So as I'm stepping into grandparenting, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be so fun. And I was like, oh, I'm still getting the same triggers, like the things like when the kids are little that brought stuff that would get me in like, or whatever. I was like, oh, it's still there. Oh no. Like, I thought it was going to show up all, I don't know what, like, I thought it was just going to be
perfectly regulated.
Yes. And it was like, oh, I'm totally not. And so, and then trying to make sure I'm honoring my grown kids' desires for how to manage or like walk through situations. Like, let's say they're having a meltdown or whatever the thing is, like making sure we're respecting how they want to parent. And and then when you have more than one kid, and then so each adult child wants to create a different dynamic, right? So then you have to learn and show up differently with each grandchild or each grouping a little bit, because they all have a little bit different. You may think when they're in my house, it's my rules, but in my book, like, they're their kids, and it's my job to respect what their desires are and the route they're going to take. I might not always understand it, or I might not even agree, but it is still not my place to,
override.
Yeah. And also, like, I've had to learn to wait for the invitation. I definitely was trying to offer and give a lot of advice and guidance that was not asked for when my first grandson was born. And it has been a process of trying to learn, like, to not offer that, but to just be like, would you like my advice right now? Or would you like my input? And I still have my moments where I forget, but like, I definitely feel like I don't lead with that the same way. So I try to be really conscious about what I'm saying. But going back to your question here, I feel that as a grandma, like, it has definitely made me, like, we were having a little thing. I was trying to buckle him in, and I was like, no, it doesn't go here. I think it goes here. And then my grandson barked at me. And he's like, no, grandma, like, you're not listening to me. And I was like, oh, like, you just talked really rude to me. And like, that wasn't nice. I don't, it hurt my feelings that you just talked to me like that. And he was like, sorry, grandma. And then later he left, and I was like, I was being like, I wasn't listening to him. And it was like, I did it. Like, I didn't show up in that moment. So I saw him the next time I saw him, I took him aside and I was like, hey, bud, remember I was trying to buckle you in? And and you yelled, and he's like, yeah. And I was like, I want to say, I'm sorry that I didn't listen to you. You were trying to tell me, and I wasn't listening. And I'm really sorry that I didn't listen to you in that moment. And he was like, it's okay, grandma. And I'm like, here I am, grandma, still screwing up.
Well, and gosh, the beauty of being respected at, that sound, when I hear I'm buckling a child, I'm seeing like car seat age.
Yeah.
And to be respected by your grandmother at that age is such a tremendous generational gift.
Oh.
And this little kid, he knows like, hey, you're not listening to me. Like, it's actually a phrase. It's a little bit, some people don't like that phrase, right? It's a little controversial, but it's a phrase that was life-saving for me and my son, because it could go both ways. And I could say to him, you're not listening. And he would like stop and look at me like, okay, what do you want to say? But when he started using it with me, I was like, oh, this works. Like, I'd be working and he's like, Mama, you're not listening. I was like, you're right. I'm not listening. How can I help you there? And for us, it was just this like it became this like call out, but like in a really productive way of, hey, like, let's reset this, you know? And I don't know why it wasn't that profound for any of my other kids, but like for my one kid, that was like I used the phrasing I said was our magic words. And it wasn't about like a shaming response. It was about I don't feel heard, but I know that this will go better if we both feel heard. That's really what the root of it was. And the way that you both came together, I find that so beautiful. And I feel like that kind of memory, even implicit, right? Because before we have contextualized, you know, vivid memory, we have implicit memory. So implicitly knowing I'm valued, I'm respected, I am worth being heard and listened to and being spoken to respectfully and speaking to the people I love respectfully, like all of it.
Yeah.
Like that's a beautiful place to live. It really is. And you're contributing to that. And I always share in every single interview, I feel like we are not supposed to be perfect. Perfect is not a human thing.
Yeah.
Perfect is a mathematical concept. Think 360 degrees makes a perfect circle. We are not supposed to be perfect. And if we were parenting or grandparenting from a place of perfection, we would be putting such a tremendous burden on these little children to be perfect that they would be swallowed up in shame. It is a wonderful thing to still be learning, to still be growing, to think about and reflect and recognize, I could have done that differently. In fact, I'm going to go repair and I'm going to let them know how I'm going to do it differently next time, right? Like all of those things. And what the wonderful thing about that is that it becomes an opportunity. Whenever we are a little dysregulated, a little bothered, a little triggered, we can choose to see that as an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, more about our circumstances, more about the things that are annoying us, and either tell us ourselves something different, manage the situation different. I mean, goodness, that situation of like trying to get a kid into a car seat is almost a universal trigger, to be perfectly honest. Like, and it comes down to power and control dynamics. And so if I know, you know, first of all, it could very well just be a one-off and it goes away and it never happens again. And that's perfectly fine. But for somebody who this is like a consistent thing, I want to look at this and go, okay, where am I feeling powerless? And if I'm feeling powerless as this kid is melting down, what that tells me is my mirror neurons are picking up on their feelings. That means they're feeling powerless. So how do I give them appropriate power and control? When I had my two boys there was a play-based parent cooperative in Vegas that was amazing. And I'd have to pick them up and they didn't want to leave. And so they'd be like also tired after playing and all the things. If you've ever had a kid that doesn't want to get in the car seat, you know. And what I started to realize is, one, they're tired. Two, they're hungry. Like they've been playing all day. And not all day. It was like 3.5 hours. But for them, that was a long time. Whatever number I'm on, they don't like to be controlled. And I was like, can we go? Can we go? Can we go? Right? Like I had that energy. They don't love that energy. So what I started instead was being playful. I would either ants go marching to the car or see like, I don't know if you're fast enough. I bet you can't get to the car before I get to 10. And it wasn't a threatening thing. It was like a challenging thing. And they would book it and they'd race there. And I never, ever, ever made them race each other. That is a recipe for disaster, particularly for my children, particularly because one is much smaller and a little bit younger than the other and always slower. Like it cannot be them against each other for my kids. Some kids can do it. My two, nope. But they can race the clock or they can race me because then they can both win. And then I would always have a snack of some option in the car and they would get to choose. Do you want this or this? That choice made them feel powerful.
Yeah.
And then they would hop right in their seat and voila. Like, and there's 1,000 other different strategies and techniques, but the point isn't so much that, it is that we're human, we're going to get bothered. What is the feeling under that bother? What is the need that's not being met? almost certainly it's being mirrored in our child or grandchild. How do we meet
Yeah.
that need? And then the fight goes away. That's
Yeah.
the pattern. And
Yeah.
I love that grandparenting gives us another opportunity to see that pattern and to practice it even more. And one of the things you said about waiting for the invitation, I think is huge when it comes to adult children, because there is this desire to do it their own way and to figure things out for themselves. And it's hard to not hear advice that's unasked for as anything other than criticism. I think I added a not in there somewhere that didn't belong. But if we feel like we're being told and told and told what to do and we didn't ask, then it's like, you think you know better than me. You're trying to control me, right? We get that same feeling. If we get the question of, are you asking advice or you just want commiseration, right? Or did you want any ideas or you're figuring it out, right? Like just that like check-in, I think is so profound, because it tells us you can figure it out. I believe in you. And I've got ideas if you want them, right? It gives them the choice. And just like I gave the kid the choice between the fruit roll or the fruit leather or the bar, we're giving the adult child the choice between struggling through, which we all have done for different things. And sometimes that's what we want to do, or asking advice. And that power coming back to us, it softens us. It's like, oh, right. You're not my enemy. You're not trying to control me. Yeah, actually, I would really like some ideas. And I think being able to just have that conversation openly between all of the adults involved is a really powerful thing. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to inject something here. Because it's funny, I had to use some of those same strategies because I realized, especially with my youngest, if he had a choice, then he was cooperative, right? But also that the curiosity of like almost gamifying as a parent, how you can, okay, they're not really in it. Like, how can I get them from point A to point B without the drama? And oftentimes it's about kind of a reroute, distract kind of thing. You're like, oh, hey, look at the bloop, whatever, you know? And so I think as a grandma, like I do have a little bit more space to have that like pause and like, you know.
Yeah.
But choice is not just important when they're little, it's even more important as an adult. But one of the things that, if there was one thing I could go back and change, one thing, it would be that. So I came from like not getting a lot of that, we'll call it guidance, kind of came from that generation that we were adulting young. And then I wanted to make sure my kids had all the wisdom and blah, 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 blah. Anyways, I would say the one thing I would do is give them more opportunity to make their own choices and try to come up with some solutions. So maybe it would be a conversation where you're saying, hey, looks like you're struggling with this. Do you have any ideas of what you think a good solution is here? Like I did some of that, but there were so many times they'd be like, oh, this happened. I'd be like, you need to go do ba, 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 and then come back to me, tell me how it turned out. And then you're going to go do b, 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 b. And they would go do it, but they weren't getting any practice on how to think through those steps and come to those solutions themselves in the future.
Yeah.
So I feel that, especially like my first couple, like I had even less practice at that. So I think when I think about, okay, now they're adults and it's just as important to give them that choice and respect it, or give them that space to do it. Because what I did by not giving them opportunity, by telling them this is how you do it, they didn't practice making a choice, see what the outcome was, and go, oh, I didn't think about this, this, and this. Next time I need to make sure. I impeded that growth and that tool growth for them. And so even as an adult and even as they're parenting, how are they going to cut their teeth, figure out what works for them, if we're still trying to guide them and control how they're doing it,
Yeah.
how do they learn and grow and navigate if we're still trying to like go, no, you should be doing this. Why aren't you doing that? Like,
Yeah.
there's things I'm sure that come up and I'm like, oh, that makes no sense to me. I mean, you could do this and it would be this, but I mean, why take a shortcut, right? But at the same time, I think, but if they get the shortcut, then they don't get the wisdom. They don't get the practice. And that way they can, move that forward. So I feel like that choice, like really respecting that we all are living our own life experience and that we need to allow each other to make the choices we want to make for ourselves that we feel are the best. And we need to trust that one another are making the best choice from the best place in our hearts with the best intentions we can. And I think that's a huge piece of it is just like that respect and and it's definitely a practice.
It absolutely is, because it's coming from such a heartfelt, loving place. Like, I want to save you from suffering. I want to help you. I want to contribute positively to your life. And the self-restraint it takes to fully step back and go, I believe you, this is hard. And I believe you that you can figure out a way through. And let them practice and sometimes fall and sometimes skin their knees and sometimes, stumble around a while. I think that's such a loving thing actually to do for them. I think you're right. And it makes me wish I had worn this shirt I have. It has like a maze labyrinth thing and it just says your path, your pace. And it's this reminder, because I can do that too, like to everyone. I can do that to family. I can do that to friends. And like, oh, well, if you just do this and this and this, then like that will resolve this, rather than, oh, how are you feeling about that? What do you want to do next? Right. And really honoring that this is their space. And so I imagine that will be one of my hardest challenges. So I'm glad that I'm aware of it now so I can practice early and often. Because it is hard. It's hard even like with math homework. It's like, do it like this. That's the answer. Okay. What do you think we should do? It's a lot. It's a lot more time consuming, which maybe is why there's more room for it in grandparenting than often in parenting, because there's like so much when you're parenting.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's part of the benefit of having healthy grandparents is all of the things that they can look at from a different perspective and that they can do from a different perspective that help create this like well-rounded support for this child. So I love that. I love that a lot. Okay. So my last question for you, all of these things that you've done and learned and grown and parented through, after your kids were all grown, maybe also during, I'm not sure, you can help me understand that. You've done a lot of your own personal journey healing work outside of like parenting specific that's led you to become this incredible coach yourself. So first of all, how did you make the shift from kind of living for your kids to including yourself in that? And then what are some things that you have really seen shifts in for yourself that has enabled you to create this incredible journey and career that you have?
That's a lot. That's a whole nother interview probably.
Okay, we'll do the notes version.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, how do I sum this up? First of all, I can't speak to what it's like to like go to school, pause, be adult, not be attached, not have a child, have career. I didn't have that. I went, child to parent.
Yeah.
And so when I decided to be a mom, I was like, okay, they are top of the filter of all my decision making. They are the priority, like what's best for them. So all my decisions, as soon as I was an adult, all my decisions are made through the filter of what's best for my children.
Yeah.
And so it made it really easy to make decisions because it was really easy to go, oh yeah, this is what's best because it was for somebody else. So I had very clear knowing about what I felt was best to protect them and
Mm-hmm.
do what was best for them. And so it was kind of fascinating when my younger two, so there was an age gap there, but when the youngest two started to get to where they're driving and about to graduate, it was 2 years in a row. So it was just like bam, bam, right? So it was like parent, 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 parent. And then all of a sudden, like, whew, we are closing that chapter. And I was like, oh my gosh, my kids are literally having the same experience of like figuring out how to make choices for themselves and what do I want without my mom's voice being the one telling me what I want. I was all of a sudden having to figure out what is best for me,
Yeah.
just because, and not the filter of what's best for my kids. And I felt like I was going through kind of a similar experience as them at the same time. We were both kind of like, like, I don't know what I need and want.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of different to be going through that at the same time as them, I think. Maybe I guess that would be, anytime you're empty nesting, you're kind of going through that transition when they are too. But I think that really cracked me open,
Nice.
because the way I defined myself and the way I had, that's how I defined myself, was being their parent. Like, that's how I had confidence. That's how I identified. And it was so much of my identity to be this mom of these boys that, like, when that just is like, oh, that's not the main thing anymore. Like, who am I? It really definitely led to me having to really go in and figure out some stuff. So that's where, I've always been, I call myself like a serial student. Like, I've always been a learner. I've never not been reading 5 books and like trying to learn. But it was right at that time that I also got into coaching, where I was receiving coaching as well. And that was a life-changing choice where I decided to invest in myself.
Nice.
Because I hadn't done that. I had always put every resource of mine to the boys. And it was like, it's 2016. I went to a Tony Robbins event and I spent money I didn't have, and it felt very scary. And every time I have invested in myself that way, I have gotten so much payoff by multiples of 10. You cannot make a mistake investing in growing yourself and getting education and getting exposure and putting yourself in situations where there's growth and change and healing. You cannot, it's just always worth it. Anyways, that was kind of that transition really kind of pushed me into that growth and change, and really like looking at myself and there was time and there was space for me to have to look at myself. And then all of a sudden I was also having to like look at my relationship with them, because it was like, oh, they don't have to abide by my rules and be present with me anymore the way I demanded of them or required of them. And so I had to have this kind of big epiphany that, like, okay, if my son doesn't call me for 2 months, or he doesn't come and see me as much, or he pops in for 5 minutes, but that's it, that doesn't mean he doesn't love me, or that I wasn't enough, or that it's, I had to realize that this is hard to say, I had conditions about what love was supposed to look like. If you love me, this is how you're supposed to behave. And I thought I was doing such a good job. I was like, ew, I have all these expectations in my mind of how you should show up for me. And that means you call me this often, or you this often. And I was like, or maybe he's going through his own little thing, and that does not mean that it's not necessarily a reflection of how much he loves me. And I had to really go in and trust that there was a foundation of love there, and not be in that fear, and give him that space. And it was funny, the minute like I did that shift and work inside myself without talking to him, like this particular one that, he started calling and showing up. And I have found that every time that I've gone in and done healing and like come to this place of true release and like going, oh, I'm putting conditions in there again, and like getting back to that unconditional space. every time there's a return. There's a closeness that returns that I don't even have to have a specific conversation but I can just see the return happen, the closeness. It's so cool how if you do the work to come from a place of love, not the ego, and like it just, you know, that's part of our journey is like figuring out how to be in that place of surrender, let them like, and loving them no matter how they decide to show up, like that. That's important. It's a cycle, but like continuing to work through it. But the beauty of it is that like if you do the work on yourself, it's so important. And you're gonna have wounds come up when your kids call you and say something and you're like, oh, oh, I'm not worthy, anymore. I was such a bad parent. But can you have compassion for yourself? Can you have compassion for that you did the best you can? Just like you should probably be paying for to your parents as well. Like I've had to, realize I need to have that same compassion and thought for my parents too. So, I think the growth and the self-healing, we need to plug into resources. You need to reach out when you know you have a hole in your ship. Go find the tools and the person or the resources to patch that up and heal, fix the hole in your ship, right? So it's our responsibility.
I agree.
And if you want a different life experience, you have the choice to go find tools. In this day and age, there is no excuse to not be able to find a resource to help you heal, grow, figure out the tools you're missing. It's just too many resources out there. So I call BS on anybody who's like, I don't know. So I would just say, like, own that you have the ability to make those shifts and change and grow and show up differently for your kids. Even now, you always have. I just think about the example. Am I living in a way that I want my kids to be living and experience their life? So if I'm miserable, is that the life I want my kids living? No. Okay, then I need to figure out what I need to shift so that I'm modeling to them that I love my life, that I'm living, I'm growing, I'm changing, and I'm passionate, because that's the life I want for my kids.
Yeah.
So I have to do the work to figure out how to live it.
Yes.
So they can see it, because if they see me stubborn, not wanting to change things, being controlling and judgmental, what are they going to live like?
Yeah.
How are they going to treat my grandkid?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that for my grandkid, so I have to make the shift. So
I love it. And what a way to give yourself so much more power to be like, yeah, I can make the shift. I can make the shifts in me. I can stay in my lane. I can focus on my healing, and it will ripple out to my whole family.
And it's not ever too late to start learning and changing and growing and owning your stuff. And it's just never, my parents are in their 80s and I can have those conversations. And I think that that's important to pass that down, that you can still grow when you're 80, then okay, I can grow in my 50s.
Yes, I love it. I love it so much. So speaking of resources, you are one of my favorite resources. So I don't know that we said this. You're in Idaho, and your events, I think, currently are all held in Idaho.
Yeah.
Okay. So for anybody local, let's get together. I go to Erika's events because they're amazing.
We like to do play dates. I'm all about play.
And they end up being so profound too. What is a way that people can find you, follow you, get in touch with you, that jazz?
Okay, so poweredbyjoypodcast.com is where you can find, that's kind of the umbrella of everything. So that's on like YouTube or Spotify or all the places you find your podcast. And I'm on Instagram under Powered by Joy podcast as well. And so you can find me there. And that's, those will connect you into everything else I'm doing, so like my events. And I love to be a resource for people. So if you're on this healing journey, you're like, oh yeah, I definitely have some things I want to go, or I know I have tools that I need or healing to do. I love to help people get that guidance and then plug them into resources that they may need that might really expedite their healing and growth, because there's a lot of that out there now.
I
So
love it.
yeah, check it out if you are looking to, find those tools that you're missing to have change and experience more joy and get empowered to make change in your life.
I love it so much. You
Yeah.
are amazing. You're an inspiration. And
Oh, thank you so much.
I can't believe how everything just aligned for us to be connected. It makes my heart so happy.
I
And
know. I love it. Every time we talk, like, I still think about some things we talked about in my episode where you were a guest on my podcast. I've totally used some of those tools. I'm like, yes, thank you. So
I love it. Yeah, we
I'm
did a
thankful for
reparenting
connecting as well.
interview on Powered by Joy
Yes.
podcast. So when you go to Spotify or to YouTube, you can find me there.
Yeah.
And that was so fun too. So I love chatting with you. I know that we're going to have you on the reparenting realm next. And yeah,
Dive into joy and repair.
yes, this is an ongoing relationship. So
Yeah.
you'll see our faces together more and more.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes, I love it.
So
Thank
much
you so much for having me. All right.
Everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.